One, two, three, four, five, and we're good. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. This is episode 9 now. We've been doing this for quite a while.
hmm Hopefully, I won't get the number of months wrong this time. It's four, no, so two months and 1 week. There we go. Last week I was so off, just so off.
Teaching people how to use calendars. Yeah, it's
I
very
can
important.
maths real good.
I can add. Anyway, yeah, so we're here, segment 1. Let's see. I confessed before we started this podcast that I really didn't have anything good for topics. I wrote a couple things down, but they kind of sucked. You said you had some ideas, so what was
Yeah,
your...
it was ironic because I woke up today. I was like, man, this would be possibly a good topic, but I don't want to like step on Kaiser's toes at all. So
No. This is a
even
two-way
better.
street.
Absolutely. So I was thinking about morals being enforced in games, whether it's through multiple choice games like The Walking Dead or Mass Effect, as we talked about before, um, or it's a single. You can't really differ from the plot, like in Spec Ops: The Line,
Mm,
where you're kind of forced to be a bad person. You kind of got to live with the consequences. And
well,
you still feel like a bad person for it,
yeah.
but it was technically your decision.
That's yeah. Okay, so that's good. So you're thinking like there moral choice, just for background for the people who listen and don't really play a ton of video games. A lot of games will have like a moral choice aspect to them, or like you're saying, there's two kind of ways they can go. They either have a moral choice system, and those can be handled well or poorly, where you choose throughout the game to do or not do certain things, and that kind of reflects on your character and or your gameplay in some way. But then you have other
Mhm.
games like Spec Ops: The Line is a fucking masterclass of a game where the game follows a linear plot. Like the plot points are going to happen, but the game
Yeah.
has you do some horrible things in it and then makes you feel guilty for doing what it told you to do.
Yeah, I mean, but even with the ones where you have a choice whether you do something right or wrong, a lot of the time the plot does not deviate based on those like that change.
Mm.
Um, so like with the I don't want to go down the Mass Effect rabbit hole again. I'll choose a different
Right.
one.
Well,
The The Walking Dead.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure no matter what choices you make, at the end of the episode, certain characters are always alive, certain characters always die.
Yeah, that's a thing for Telltale Games. They make
Hmm.
the Walking Dead video games, and they also make the what was it? They did a Batman one. They did a
Yeah, they do
Kings.
some really bad. They do Minecraft and everything. But The
Yeah,
Walking Dead is the only good one,
they
I
did a
think.
Borderlands. No, the Borderlands one was actually pretty good.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I've never had much interest in Borderlands. I don't know. You'd think I'd love it because of like the art style and things,
hmm.
but the characters have just never grabbed me.
The first the actual like main Borderlands games, they're really just run and gun shooter looter kind of games. You play them multiplayer. You play them with your friends. You're not really there for the plot. It's kind of funny at times, but that's not really why you're playing the game.
Yeah.
But then Telltale took it and they made a actually really good story driven episodic thing out of it. I don't want to call it. I feel weird calling them games because they're really they're games in the same sense that like Everyone's Gone to the Rapture as a game. It's a walking simulator where
Yeah,
you get to
it's
make choices
a
every now and
visual
again.
novel.
Yeah, it's more along that line. But
Hmm.
again, they took the
With
Borderlands
less anime
setting.
people in it.
They took the Borderlands setting and they made some like a compelling story out of it. Had some interesting characters and stuff.
And I
Um,
will say, I really enjoyed watching the Telltale Games series. And I don't think I've actually played any of them myself. I've watched the Walking Dead one from about three different people's perspectives.
hmm,
And it is a really thrilling story.
I've played.
I mean, yeah, it's a good book, basically.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's a good book. I've played through it all the way. I think I don't know if they made a fourth one, but I've played the first three. The one
Hmm.
where you have that the dude. I can't remember his name.
Kenny?
No, Kenny was the redneck. The main dude in the first game is
Oh my god, how can I love that guy.
yeah, he was such a good character, and like the way they
It
handle
was.
his stuff and it. I don't know. That's gonna
It's a
come through
small
my
name.
mic, but
I'm gonna look this up while you waffle.
so I really enjoyed the storyline. Like the first one where he ends up meeting up with this little girl, and he's trying to keep her safe and keep her alive. And
Lee.
Lee,
Lee
that's what it
Everett.
was. His name was Lee, and the
Yeah.
girl's name was Clementine. By the
Yeah.
way, if I can deviate for a second, that's a really Clementine is a really good example of how to have a well-written child character. Because a lot of the
Absolutely.
times when you have a child in a movie or a book or a TV show, they're just placed there to give people a motivation to do something.
Hmm. And they're
Um,
quite often whiny and just generally can't help themselves. In this case,
exactly.
Clementine, don't get me wrong, there's some things that she definitely cannot do.
Right.
But there are other things where she excels better than an adult. Like,
Well, that's what they did. They took a really well developed. They like this girl probably lost her family. She has like one thing to remember them
yeah, she
by.
did.
She knows that she's a burden to these people and kind of does her best to stay out of the way. But there's moments where she's still a child, and
Mm.
still has that just like hope to find a parental figure or something like that. It's a very compelling story. But you're right.
And you definitely see a progression in her character. You
Right.
definitely see her growing up.
Well, and she's an adult by the third game and actually ends up being one of the major characters.
Mm.
But yeah, to bring it back to what you said, they definitely do not change the plot significantly no matter what choices you make in the game. Like some things will change, like maybe a character will like not like you and they'll have like a line of angry dialogue, but the plot basically Telltale Games is masterful at giving you choices that appear meaningful but do practically nothing.
Exactly, yeah. It gives you a real, like, in the heat of the moment, you completely forget all that, and you're like, oh my god, I can't go without this person. I have to save this person.
Right. It
And
exceptional
that's really
writing. Exceptional writing. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
said we don't want to go down the Mass Effect track again, but the only thing I will say is Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 all the way up to the ending is an amazing example of the plot actually changing and deviating somewhat, like in significant ways, and the gameplay too, depending on what choices you make. Some people will be alive or dead, some factions will be hostile or allies. Like,
Yeah.
it's
I mean, I
not.
kind of see it in the same way because it's at the end of the day, again, it comes down to instead of in The Walking Dead, it's keep one person alive or the other. In Mass Effect, it's keep one person or group alive, and say heck you to the other. Um,
I can see that, yeah.
but it does definitely impact the actual because in Mass Effect there's actual shooting gameplay, and so the choices you make do actually affect the assistance you get.
Yeah.
Because different groups give you different things, as I recall.
Yeah, there, in Mass Effect
Uh,
2, it's entirely possible to get your entire crew and yourself killed.
So what I'm saying is it's a lot more tangible in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less emotionally gripping, but
It depends
yeah,
on how
it's
invested you
useful
are
for
in the
the game.
characters.
Yeah.
I've played those games so many times, like all of those characters are just like, ah, Rex is my boy.
Is that the Krogan?
Yeah, that's a big dinosaur dude.
I do love him.
It's literally my favorite character in that entire
Is he the one
series.
who's British?
No. No, he talks like Shepard.
He's a sniper or something.
There
Who am I thinking of?
I don't think there's a British sniper.
Uh,
There is a British character in the third game. But she just like is your tech person. She's not actually like a playable person in the game.
I think yeah, they've got like a stony face. I'm looking things up again. I'm sorry. I hope this doesn't come through on the audio.
I can hear the keyboard.
Garrett.
Oh, Garrus. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the
He's my favorite.
he
boy.
doesn't have like a British accent though.
doesn't he? It's been many years since I played it.
Yeah, I don't think he has unless they patched it for the UK version.
It just seems like a tea drinking motherfucker.
Yeah, he's another really
Pardon
good
my
character.
language.
I wasn't like a huge fan of him in the first game, but he really came into his own in the second one. We're going off on Mass Effect again. We were
Yes, we
talking
are.
about
This is why I was trying.
yeah, I know. So we're talking about like morality in games, like in
Mm.
specifically how the game tries to either let you have your own morals or how it tries to push you in one specific direction.
Yeah.
In Spec Ops:
Maybe
The
we
Line,
should.
oh, sorry,
I was about to say maybe we should go to Speckles Line because that is a
yeah,
game that we both found. It was actually recommended to me by you,
yeah,
so I played it, and I played it again, all the way through another 3 times because I think I was trying to bend the morality of the game and be like, I don't want to click here because I know what will happen.
yeah.
If we go on.
So to give a quick plot synopsis, and I will emphasize like skip ahead 5 or 10 minutes if you like if you actually care about the plot because some of the twists in this are just gripping.
It
So
is a brilliant game, and I would recommend you play it. But if you're not the kind of person who plays games, then yeah, just
so
listen.
in terms of like gameplay, it's just a generic like third person like shooter. Like you're playing as this special ops guy from the U.S. Army. He's going into Dubai. There was some kind of a massive ecological catastrophe, and some U.S. relief force went in, but they lost contact with them. No one's had any contact. So you get sent in there with your team of like it's you and 2 other dudes. And gameplay wise, again, very generic shooter, but slowly over the course of the over the course of things, like your guy gets more and more like seemingly mentally unstable. I guess he's doing more and more fucked up things, and then there's like this big revelation at the end that you actually were the one that did all of this. Like you were the people that went in there in the first place, and you've set up yourself as this sort of little king of this chaotic world, like this that's been created by this city being completely isolated, and like the game reveals it slowly until like a big crescendo at the end where they actually show you, and it's like boom, this is what's actually been going on the whole time.
Mm.
But excellent story. If it follows along, it's the Heart of Darkness, the book, and I think was later remade into a movie that I do not remember the name of. That was set in Vietnam, but it's an older book. So Heart of Darkness is a book about a similar thing happening, but it's set in the 1800s, and it's a British expeditionary party in Africa. But pretty much the same plot.
But yes, the way I kind of see it is if Call of Duty got deep, if they stopped with all this stupid high tech gizmos that no one really gives a damn about, and actually got morally down dirty.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know I kind of like went around and around with the story a little bit, but the driving
that's kind of the story.
yeah
Goes
no
round and round.
but driving home the morality point is the game. Like the game tells you to do things that you would do in a normal FPS. It's like, oh, use this weapon on these enemy targets over here, and it turns out that you just firebombed civilians with white phosphorus. Which is, if you don't know what it is, it's an extremely like brutal weapon that I think is actually banned now because it essentially melts people alive. And
anyway,
but the game,
maybe...
no, come on, let me finish. The game tells you to do things that you would do in like another generic first-person shooter or third-person shooter, like a war shooter, and then makes you feel guilty for doing it. Like it's on the surface, it's a generic shooter, but beneath the surface, it's like this psychological game that really messes with you. All right, that's it. Summary over. What were you gonna say?
Okay. I wasn't trying to interrupt you. I was just trying to say that's maybe a little too brutal detail.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that, and then what was the other game Deus Ex?
Oh yeah, Deus Ex. Well, the original one or Human Revolution?
I'm talking about the only good one.
Oh, so the original one.
Human Revolution.
Okay, nope. So
The
there are four games. There's Deus Ex, Deus Ex Invisible War, Deus Ex Human Revolution, and then Deus Ex Mankind Divided. The two
Yeah, Human
modern
Revolution.
one are Human Revolution and Mankind Divided. Yeah.
Um, because I consider that the good one because although it had a terrible ending as we discussed before,
Hmm.
um,
Yep.
the actual like combat and stuff really fun, and it gives you an option from the beginning. Do you want to go in deadly or do you want to go in tranquilizer? Like on all the enemies you fight,
Yeah.
and you can use both by any means. But it's kind of like a completionist thing, I suppose. If you take the less than lethal route, because obviously enemies can get back up again, but there is still the moral quandary of you're not technically killing all these criminals, you're just sending them to prison like a good law enforcement agent would do.
Yeah. But
Uh,
the deadly approach, which you in the game still don't really get punished for except in certain situations. You can complete the game either way and still things will work
I,
out relatively the same. It's really your own headcanon. Like,
hmm.
do you
I
feel
think
morally justified?
there are points in it where if you get through like a whole area without killing anyone, when you finally talk to the boss at the end, he's like, "Look, you didn't kill any of my men. I'm going to be a lot easier talking to than
There
if you
yeah.
just murdered your way into here."
There are yeah, that's true. There are in-game consequences to, you're it's easier to talk somebody down like at the end if you didn't murk all of his people.
Yeah, but it is easier to get to him if you do just murk all of his people. So it's
Exactly.
that weighing up of the two. Um, but
It
yeah, it's very limiting. It's kind of yeah, to be morally righteous in that game makes it a lot harder, which I think is a really good payoff because um, it is a very real challenge. You can't use any explosives. You can't like bear hug people through walls.
yeah.
Um, yeah, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just thinking of other games that have done something similar and but not as well. And I think
Okay,
a really good example of that is what's it called? It starts with a D.
I thought you were gonna say Metal Gear Solid.
I haven't played that game.
They do the same thing.
Okay.
So the D.
It's the one. It's like crap. You're in like a pseudo medieval place. You're an assassin. We're not really an assassin, but you're framed.
Divinity?
There's rats everywhere. Crap. What the hell is that game called? Talk about something else while I look this up.
Okay.
That's the theme of this segment. I think that's what I'm going to title this segment. Talk about something else while I look this up, because we've
Okay,
both done it now.
moral games that we've been playing very recently that we played yesterday was Among Us, which isn't really a moral game. It is kind of a moral game because I feel morally bad after playing it.
Only if you get to be the imposter.
Because the moment someone accuses me, it's a big like, okay, it's big on trending at the moment. It's this old game people have only just picked up because people have started playing it on YouTube and Twitch, and
Dishonored.
I
It's called Dishonored.
okay, cool.
Oh my god,
Didn't I say that? No, I said Divinity.
you did.
And yeah, so the moment someone accuses me of being the bad guy, I jump down their throat so hard. I'm like, it's this person, it has to be.
Yeah, you
And then,
overcompensate. It kind of gives you away, though.
no, no, no. When I was innocent, there were two occasions when I was completely innocent, and even the time when I was guilty, when people said I was using vents, I never used a vent, and people kept accusing me of using vents, and so I was furious, and I'm like, this person's a liar, and then it turns out they were lying, and then that just screws the whole team. Because I can be very passionate about my views when I'm being accused on games.
That's
Um,
what I found that my success. I never got accused even once, and that's
no,
most.
you didn't. You were typing stuff like "I want to make cookies" into the chat while everyone else was accusing murder.
Yeah, exactly. That was my strategy. It was just, I'm just gonna say nonsensical bullshit.
Yeah.
Or like somebody said like I have suspicions for no one, and I was like I have many suspicions for everyone.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was
You
just,
were like, April and said, "I'm powering up," and you're like, "Powering up for murder."
Yeah, exactly. I just said like goofy shit like that the whole time, and no one ever suspected
Um,
me.
to be fair, people, I don't think I ever got thrown out of the airlock.
No, I tried to
And
throw
no
you out when
point.
you were the imposter because I figured you out,
Yeah,
but I didn't have enough
yeah. After I got
votes.
you to kill two people for me.
Yeah, God, I trusted my
Uh,
friend. It blinded me to the monster that he had become.
and then my new friend killed my old friend.
God damn it. So, but bringing it
But
back, now that I know what game I was talking about, Dishonored does something very similar to Deus Ex, but more poorly.
this one is the one with the brother and the sister, right? The
That's
mask?
Dishonored 2.
Oh, okay.
So Dishonored 1, it's just the guy. And he
Yeah.
was actually her bodyguard, not her brother.
Oh, okay. I've never played any of the games. I've just seen little
I've
bits
only
of
played the
footage.
first one, and that was enough for me to not want to play the second one. The gameplay is a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Similar thing where you have objectives on a map. You have a lot of different ways to go about it. You can be all lethal or all stealthy or a little mix of both. Only. But the problem is, this game, it has a good and a bad ending. So you have to either be 100% stealthy or, well, not 100%, but close enough, or 100% lethal to get one ending or the other. It Deus Ex almost is helped by the fact that it has an ending Tron 5000 at the end where you just push a button and get the ending you want.
Yeah.
Because all of the moral choices in the game are kind of just all like there's some limited gameplay benefits, right? But it's mostly in your head.
Yeah,
Like,
it's supposed to just get to the end. That's
yeah.
your main goal.
So with this game though, it doesn't do that. The game has like a moral choice system that it doesn't tell you about and then judges you about at the end,
Yeah.
which could be good, could be bad. But my problem is once I like that occurred to me that there's probably going to be a good ending if I just go. I just did 100% stealthy, and not because it was the more natural way to play it.
You did 100% stealthy?
I wanted the good ending. It's not how I would have played the
Damn.
game had I known that. I probably would have. I probably would have shanked a few more people. There are,
Exactly, you would have loved to. You're just loud incarnate.
yeah. I do play stealth games every now and again.
This
It's,
long silence hasn't been added in. This is what it genuinely sounds like.
is this you being surprised that I actually do, occasionally do some
Well,
stealth?
yeah, because I mean, whenever you play a game, it's either shotgun or heavy machine gun that you take. There's no other option on your screen.
They are my spirit animals.
Yeah.
God. Okay. So, all right. Well, we're probably 7 minutes away from the end of this segment. Any other games or stuff that like? All right. Well, we've talked a lot about moral choices in games and games that allow you to kind of choose and things, either to varying degrees. Either your choices do matter or they don't matter, and they're handled well or handled poorly. What about games? We've only talked about one, and that was a game that did it well, Spec Ops: The Line, that kind of railroads you into one kind of moral mindset, right?
Right.
What's a game that's the opposite, that does the same thing? It railroads you onto one kind of moral path and does it very badly. Like, can you think
It was
of
very
one?
bad. Okay. Thing is, I quite often like these moral games because it makes you think. And so I feel like a bad version of that would just be you don't really feel any regret or something for the actions that you do.
Oh, I've got one then.
Okay.
Detroit Become Human.
I haven't played this.
All right.
This is the one where you're like look like a human but you're a
Yeah.
robo.
Yeah. So Detroit Become Human was a game that came out for the PS4. It's also like pretty much like a story game. It's a game in the very, very narrowest sense, whereas you walk around and can complete objectives, and there's occasionally quick time events where you have to hit a button really fast.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the extent of the gameplay. It's mostly story based, so I don't really consider it to be a game. But
Good.
it's like near future in Detroit, and basically there's a bunch of androids have been made. They've been made to look like humans, and they have taken over like most of the menial jobs, like
Hmm.
shopkeeper, truck driver, garbage
Okay.
collector,
So is it
people.
about civil rights, basically?
Yeah, and that was, I think, the first mistake is they made the game about civil rights
Okay.
because it would have a cleaner and better way to go about it would have been to maybe go. One of the first things that you see people protesting about in the game is the androids are taking all the jobs, right?
Right.
And so people are out of work. There's a lot more poor. So they could have gone for a storyline about wealth inequality. I think that would have been maybe a little bit more apt. But instead, they went for a very civil rights kind of analogy. It didn't
Yeah.
really work out too well. And one of the reasons it didn't work out too well is there's only one likable character.
Right. Yeah, because you play as three, don't you?
You do. You play through as three people. One is a kind of housekeeper slash nurse android who is this dude for this old painter. He's rich, but he's in a wheelchair, and so this android is like a housekeeper
Servant.
slash
Yeah.
servant, right? And the old dude who he's this person too, he treats him like basically like a son almost.
Oh, okay. I was expecting
And
it to be the opposite way, right? He
no, no,
treats him
no.
like
He
a jerk.
treats him like a son, but his actual son resents the android for it, and some stuff happens. The old dude ends up
Uh,
dead, and the android ends up, blamed industrial accident, and he gets thrown in the garbage heap.
gotcha.
Um,
It
the
sounds
other
like My Little Toaster, whatever it was called.
Brave Little Toaster. I love that movie as a
Brave
kid.
Little Toaster.
Um,
Anyway, yeah.
other android is this woman who, again, like a nanny bot. Essentially, she's like a what is it, like a housekeeper slash babysitter for this guy. Single dad, has a daughter. Um,
Okay, sounds very similar to the first one.
Similar, except the dad is like an out of like he's unemployed. He spends all his time drinking and like huffing on this future version of crack,
Hmm.
and is mildly abusive. Well, he varies between mildly abusive and very abusive.
Okay.
And then the third person is an android employed by the corporation that makes the androids, and he essentially is sent out to take care of androids that malfunction, either by like essentially it's the very first mission in the game. This android has to talk down an android that's gone crazy and has taken a little girl hostage, and
Okay.
like killed her father and presumably her mother too, or it may have just been her father.
Hmm.
And then he's like
So you
on.
always play as an android.
You always play as an android. All three characters are androids. The problem is now it's a really good setup. I think they could have done something with this. The corporate android guy is actually the most interesting part of the story because he teams up with like this police officer, this detective that has like hatred for androids, and the police officer is like ordered by his superior to work with the guy, and the two of them at first like have a very abrasive relationship, but the cop starts to warm to him, and the android starts acting a little bit less robotic, working together.
Okay.
It's like a really good plot line. I really enjoyed it.
Can I
The
say this is like almost a carbon copy of a British TV program, which I'll talk about in a bit.
Okay, we'll talk about it in media. um
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that's the setup, right? The problem is two out of the three characters, or two out of the three plot lines, no, three out of the three plot lines, they shit on. So, and they do it in different ways. The one that is immediately terrible is the guy who is the servant slash son figure to the old guy in the wheelchair. That android has it's just immediately unlikable. Like he gets thrown out because he gets blamed for the death of the old guy,
Yeah.
and he ends up in a garbage heap. And they do this weird scene that I think is supposed to like horrify you and make you feel pity and sympathy for them, because you're in a junkyard and some of the androids are still partially activated, and but they're partially
Hmm.
demolished or something. Like it's meant to look like horrifying, but in my they're fucking robots. I had no sympathy for them because they
Right.
didn't build up. It happened too early in the game. They didn't build up this thing in my mind that they actually have the capability of experiencing emotions. They
Yeah, I think
just
that's the real divide, isn't it?
let me. So they show that, but they didn't build it up enough before it to happen. Second plot line, the nanny bot, she takes the kid away because the father goes crazy and nearly beats the android to death in front of the kid. She manages to escape with the little girl and essentially kidnaps her. Unfortunately, you get to the end of the game and you find out, spoiler alert, that the little girl is also an android. And the father had lost his actual daughter and bought like an android replacement to kind of help him deal with his grief. And so it went from a plot line of can a robot learn to love a human to, well, a robot's just loving another robot. And it derailed the whole thing. There is some payoff at the end if you do things right, and the father kind of makes up with the both of them, and looks like he's going to change. The third plot line was the one I was the most bitter about, because I loved the RoboCop like dynamic the whole way through, and at the end, you're forced if you decide that you want to side with the company that makes the androids and go like, no, they're robots, let them stay robots. If you decide to go that route, which is the way I went, because in my headcanon, this guy was, that was his job, and he was just doing his job. And if you do that, you're forced to kill the other cop. Right. But so this was what the game really lost me, was though after on the first guy's storyline, the one that ends up in the junkyard. I'm jumping all over the place here because I'm remembering bits and pieces of this as I'm talking. I literally there's a scene where you have to do a bunch of QuickTime events, like you're that android who somehow becomes the leader of an android civil rights movement. Somehow he gathers a bunch of robots together, and he essentially, if he touches them, he can transfer his code to them and make them suddenly want to rebel, which to me sounded like a virus. So he's out there infecting all of these other androids to make them march, right?
Yep.
And then like the riot police come out and they go to try and stop these androids because they're clearly malfunctioning. And you have to do a bunch of QuickTime events to get the guy to essentially not die to the riot police.
Yep.
I literally put down the controller and went to my kitchen to make some food. Because I was like, nope, he's dying. I hate that character. Like, I am doing the world a service because he is infecting all of these other androids. Like, it's going to completely destroy the economy. Like, no. The only moral thing I could do was put the controller down, and I did. And it took like a solid 5 minutes of failing QuickTime events before he actually died. Like, they really did not want this you to have this character die in the plot line.
Right. Yeah, clearly you can have them all die, can't you?
Yeah, in different ways. But
yeah, there's for the media segment. I'm just gonna say I'm going to be revisiting this for sure.
All I'm gonna say to capstone all of that rambling.
Okay.
Is this game had a interesting premise, 3 characters that on the surface had interesting like backstories. They somehow in the course of the game, through just really poor writing decisions, made me hate one of them so much that I literally stopped playing the game so that he would die and I could play as just the other 2.
Yeah.
So
you went from being a favorite to your least favorite?
No, my favorite was always the RoboCop guy.
Oh, okay, right. Sorry. I was saying it was him that was having these decisions, but no, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. It was the guy who took care of the dude in the wheelchair, the guy that got thrown out. He's the one that ends up being the revolution guy. Okay. And I don't know. It's so ham-fistedly written that it just none of it meshed well. Anyway. Okay. So that's the end of segment 1. Unless you want to have any final thoughts, because I just rambled for the last 8 minutes.
No, that's right. I'm just trying to keep the things that you said in my memory for in 10 minutes' time when we're talking about this again. Okay. All right. We're going to wrap it up there. This is the end of segment 1. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back soon with segment 2 of episode.
2, 3, 4, 5. I really don't need to count up on the second segment. I think I'm just anyway. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We're now on segment 2, media. I definitely have a ton to talk about in this segment.
Oh, hell yeah!
But you sounded like you wanted to talk a little bit more about.
Yes, from segment 1. Sorry if you're listening to this 2 days later and you might have forgotten what we were talking about at the end of the last section. But to recap, it was on a game called Detroit Become Human, where it's a social politics between androids and humans. The topic I wanted to bring up is a British TV series that came out a couple of years before Detroit Become Human. And from the plot points that Kaiser has described, because I haven't played the game, very, very similar plot to the TV series. This TV series, when it was first advertised, it was advertised in the respect of it didn't look like a TV show. They advertised it like it wasn't, like androids were becoming an actual product in real life. I don't know if I can't bring I don't know, maybe Kaiser can link a video to it somewhere. But yes, the adverts for it originally when it came out were very realistic looking. They were the whole premise is that humanity has come up with these androids that help in day-to-day life in all forms. So there was a few main characters, much like in the game. One was a android that helps out around the house, and so it moves in with his family. And eventually it ends up that there's a whole bunch of drama between humans and the robots, because some of the robots start getting sentience, they start having emotions, they start not liking their lives in some respect. And this one that's lived with a family, I think, ran off with their youngest child, which was very similar to what Kaiser was talking about. Yeah. I don't think the child ended up being a robot, but yeah, there was that. Another main character that we follow, and this is a big old spoiler for the series, so if you are going to watch it, skip ahead a little bit. It's these two human detectives who go out and track down androids that have been faulty, and they're really nice characters. It's a very good dynamic. Anyway, after I think the first season or something, it turns out that one of the detectives is in fact a robot as well.
Oh my god.
Which is again very similar to what Kaiser was talking about on one of the characters.
Sounds like whoever made this, the guy that made this video game, was copying someone's homework.
Right? It's very. This is why I was like, oh my god. And the third scenario is very different. The third scenario is, and this is going to be a slightly. I'm not going to go into any detail. Pretty gruesome and a little bit shocking. The third robot in this case was a prostitute. And she's like the first one to snap because she's fed up with humans being really quite horrible to her. And there ends up being this movement with the robots, and I think you're meant to kind of side with the robots because they're essentially the ones who are being used in the first place. But I mean, they're robots, so it's kind of how mankind's always done things. A toaster is a toaster; it's got a function. And there ends up being this virus kind of thing.
Oh god, it really is the same plot.
Exactly, where their sentience to be transferred to another robot by a simple data download. Exactly the same as...
Oh my God.
So it was a really good series, very good. I recommend it. I've been saying that a lot this podcast, but I think we've only been talking about really good movies and games so
considering segment 3 last time was just a rant about things that annoyed us. Like we need to bring some positivity out into the world.
it's well, yeah. I mean, positivity. We're talking about things that are very dramatic and often sad in these
Well,
films and games, but
true.
that makes them a good game
Well,
or
exactly
film.
true, but not positivity in terms of like necessarily just a happy jolly old story, but
Hmm.
like
A
a
well
very
written,
like a well crafted piece of media.
precisely.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, a very realistic, quite chilling. I think they're still releasing more series to it after the first series or two. I think it kind of dropped in popularity because I don't know, they started repeating things and the drama's not so new anymore.
Well,
But
there's another series which I haven't seen that I think is it followed a similar plot line, and it's the one that I heard compared to Detroit Become Human quite a bit was Westworld.
oh yeah, I've seen the Critical Drinker review this, but I haven't actually seen it myself.
Yeah, I again I've yeah same with me. I heard a lot of good things, especially about the earlier seasons. I had coworkers that watched it, and they said great things about it. But similar plot line, an amusement park where they use robots to let humans live out like fantasies, like living in the Wild West, and they have
Hmm.
cowboy androids and stuff like that. And the androids essentially are either are or become sentient. I haven't seen the series, but from what I heard,
Hmm.
similar thing. They kind of start to pull some contrived plot points later in the series.
Yeah, they all seem to work for a business, and it's not you're not quite sure whether the business is on the human side or the robot side by the end of it.
But the one that you're talking about, that sounds significantly closer to the plot line of the game that I played.
Yeah, it's called Humans. If you want to look it up.
Yeah, I took a note actually. You said to link it. I think I may actually link to the trailer that you were talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, it's quite revolutionary in terms of TV. But yeah, it's another movie that
Hmm.
we watched very recently, which we both highly enjoyed, which is a rarity, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, is Venom.
Yeah. For reference, talking about the newest Marvel
Is it
iteration of it.
Marvel? It is
Yeah.
Marvel.
Yeah, because it's a Spider-Man villain, so it has to be Marvel.
Oh yes.
But
Without
yes,
any mention of Spider-Man.
yeah. Because the first iteration of Venom was in the original Spider-Man 3, where Spider-Man gets the black suit,
Yeah.
and in that iteration, Venom is just some dude that Peter Parker punched in the face. But this was a much better like version of him, I think.
Oh yeah. It was. It might have just been because they wrote the story quite so well in this one. I
Mm.
do definitely put this. He's got so much more personality and character in this. Probably because they left out the fact that he's meant to be a villain.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of made him good, which is a bit.
Well, they didn't make him necessarily good. They made him more of an anti-hero. He still bites people's heads off a few times in the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
quick plot synopsis. Again, spoilers, so potentially skip ahead. But Venom, the plot of Venom. This guy who's a reporter. He's trying to look into like he's got this made a big name for himself, going after people, exposing them for doing like evil corporate things. His girlfriend's a lawyer, and he gets a job to do an interview with this big name tech giant guy who made this big startup company. He's essentially think like SpaceX, but if SpaceX also had a pharmaceutical division. And he's building up these ships that can go to somewhere or something. I don't know. Spaceship goes out. What's really good? But this guy, he suspects something's off because their pharmaceutical wing has done some sketchy shit, and so he, a little bit unethically, sneaks onto his girlfriend's computer, finds some data, and then uses it to question the guy, and it ends up with him losing his job, losing his girlfriend because he used her to do that. She gets fired, and then dumps him. And at his kind of like absolute low, he is just wandering around dejected. He sees like horrible things happening all around him, and then he gets contacted by this one woman who works in the lab for this pharmaceutical guy, and it turns out that they brought aliens back, like some alien goo from their last space mission, and that alien goo, this guy thinks is the next stage in like human evolution, right? It's gonna help them, be able to travel the stars and be awesome. Anyway,
This is the bad guy, by the way, not the main character.
yeah, the bad guy, the guy who owns the pharmaceutical company. I don't remember any of the names. Sorry.
No, I
Um,
don't.
the guy who played the good guy is named Tom Hardy, so I'm just gonna call the actor's name is Tom Hardy, so I'm just gonna call him Tom. Gets contacted by this pharmaceutical lab lady who sees all the bad shit happening. Like they're doing human experiments, people are dying. Tells this guy about it, sneaks him into the lab so he can look around and try and figure out what's going on. He ends up getting like this goo attaches itself to him and goes into his body, and he starts having all these weird reactions to it. He's hungry all the time. He's like eating like a raw lobster and stuff like that. It turns out that this goo is sentient, and it's essentially like a symbiotic slash parasitic organism that links itself up to him, and it starts talking to him and stuff. And this is where the movie starts to really get entertaining, in my opinion. Is every time, the goo has some hilarious things to say, but finishing up the synopsis, he gets the goo. Him and the goo allows him to transform into this invulnerable like being, and him and the goo go off and try and stop this evil corporate guy who also has his own goo, which apparently wants to bring more goo monsters to the Earth and basically infect the whole planet or something like that, or take it over. Doesn't
they
matter.
want to eat all the humans, basically.
That's what it is. And they have a big apocalyptic like punch up at the end of the movie, and they prevail, and he gets to keep his goo, and the two of them are like sidekicks after that or something.
Yeah.
That's
To put it more simply, the main character gets Dwayne the Rock Johnson. If Dwayne the Rock Johnson was evil inside of him, and he's fighting.
Wait, hold on. The Rock voiced the goo?
No. But like super strong,
Oh, okay.
funny, and because he's evil, he also wants to like eat people's heads.
Yeah,
But
and
that kind of like super buff up thing.
yeah, and they do make him like out to be an anti-hero. Like there's a point where there's a shoplifter, right, and he threatens the guy to get him to stop, and then he just kind of reconsiders, and then the goo eats him anyway.
Can you imagine if Venom was actually the Rock?
that would have been.
I would love that.
That would have been absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
But
no, some very cool action scenes.
yeah, and some of some of the dialogue between the main dude Tom Hardy plays and the Venom goo.
Venom.
Venom. I don't know why I keep calling it the goo, but Venom. Between Venom and Tom Hardy, like they have some amazing character interactions in that movie.
Yeah, so much so that I burst out laughing during the fucking video. I'm very good at staying quiet, but there was such a funny moment that I lost it, and then Kaiser lost it.
Yeah, it was. So one of the very first things, like the Venom saves Tom Hardy, brings him out to like a platform, and this is when Tom Hardy first starts questioning him, and Venom just like pops out and like is facing him, and he just goes, "You're a loser, Tom," or whatever the character's name was. And that was one of the parts we both laughed. And then he explains like, "I'm a loser too," or something like that. And then they were both.
Yeah, I didn't really get that part.
What I think the idea was that they kind of explained this a little bit. The goo that infests the pharmaceutical dude, the bad guy, that is like the commander of a mission sent to Earth to go there and eat people, right?
Yeah.
But what happens and Venom's just some like nobody on his crew, like a tech or something, essentially somebody who has no authority, who's considered like a just a nobody on their mission.
Part of the forward attack party.
Well, that's the thing. He was like, so say the forward attack party is like a commander, 2 lieutenants, and like 3 foot soldiers. Venom was like the shittiest of the 3 foot soldiers.
But there were only 4 people.
No, there were
4 goos.
Right, I'm exaggerating the numbers, but that was the way they explained. I'm not saying it makes perfect sense, but that was how they explained it in the actual movie.
Yeah, But no, what the part I was referring to was the elevator scene.
Yeah, where he calls him a pussy.
Yeah. So Venom wants to jump out of the top floor of a skyscraper, basically, and just get out of the building that
Yeah.
way.
And Tom
And it
Hardy's like,
cuts
no, I'm going to
to
take the
Tom
elevator.
Hardy taking the elevator.
And you just hear Venom in the background. Pussy.
Yeah.
It's so
No,
good.
there were quite a few funny interactions between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I think that they were probably one of the best parts of the film, the interaction between this
Yeah.
alien, down to earth human.
The movie has a lot of dark humor in it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't especially for like movies based out of like Marvel properties, most of them are more lighthearted and a little bit more like even when they have their darker moments, they're not really that dark. This movie doesn't doesn't go that way. This movie just, it starts off pretty dark and it stays there, but it has like moments of humor and levity built into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was as dark as The Punisher by any means. It was a lot less visceral.
Yeah, not
But,
nearly that bad.
Still, every time he like eats someone's head, it is a bit like, oh, okay, yep, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, that definitely just happened.
Yeah, the female Venom,
Yeah, what is it?
very mixed feelings on that. Like, very, very cool, don't get me wrong. But when he starts making out with the female Venom and then it turns into human, I was like,
Yeah.
that starts as an alien. That's weird.
I don't know if this is coming through my mic, but I have my window open and I can, somebody's shouting at somebody else out, like, I don't know if it's out one of the windows out here, but it's echoing down the canal. I don't think it's coming through the mic, but it's very distracting.
Okay.
Somebody's having a bit of a domestic dispute somewhere down the canal.
Oh dear.
Anyway, but yeah, no, the part you're referring to when Venom like infects his girlfriend to get back to him or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, recommend the movie. It's pretty good, but be warned, there is some some somewhat gruesome moments, and it is darker than your average Marvel kind of movie.
Yeah. That being said, I would love to see him alongside the other superhero. Like,
That it would be, oh my
it'll
god.
never happen because he's too gritty. But
What if only?
I
Yeah,
want to see more films with him in.
there was so this is actually a neat transition into one of the things I wanted to talk about, and that's the fact that I have been binge watching.
Ollie.
What?
That's the main character's name, Ollie, because I remember
Ollie.
from the very last scene after credits
Okay.
in the blood. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so I wouldn't say binge watching, but I've been watching the Marvel movies in order. This started because we watched Venom, and then I was like thinking about the other movies that Marvel has put out, specifically like the Marvel, quote unquote, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they have all the movies interconnected. Because when I watched those movies, like I watched Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and then the next movie I watched was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And then I saw Infinity War and Endgame, but I didn't see any of the movies in between. So I've been watching all of them. And I will say two things. Actually, that's not true. I watched Civil War on an airplane. But so, standout that I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did was the Thor movies. I've watched the first two of those now. But the one I really want to talk about is Captain America Civil War, which is a movie I had seen before, but I watched it again, and it reminded me why I disliked Captain America so much.
I've not seen it. I will say quickly on Captain America and Iron Man, they both had really good first films. And Iron Man, I would say his first film was about as gory as Venom was.
That's true,
Like, he was
yeah.
firing missiles and bullets at terrorists, and there was blood, and there was, I think, even a little bit of torture.
Oh, yeah. Same thing with the Captain America first film. There's a scene where Captain America throws a guy back into a jet engine, and he bursts into a cloud of blood.
Yeah, that's a bit more. I don't know. Maybe it's not.
I don't know.
It's
That's
less sensitive because it's instant, I think.
maybe, but I think but for you as it's instant for the guy that got it, but for the audience, I think it's a little bit more shocking.
Yeah, I
But
mean
either
they
way,
brought up fucking Nazis in a Marvel film, so yeah, it's
so,
up there.
so now I've now seen the first two Captain America movies, and I kind of understand why people liked his character a little bit more, because
Right.
I first I only saw him in the Avengers films, and I saw him in Civil War when I saw that movie. So,
Mm.
but the Iron Man movies, I loved Iron Man 1. Loved it.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2, also very good movie. Didn't like it as much as the first one, but still, very good
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. Same.
But when Civil War came around, that movie essentially pits Captain America and Iron Man and their separate factions of the Avengers against each other. And what the conflict boils down to, without spoiling, because you haven't seen it, and you should watch it, it's a very good movie. It boils down to Captain America being a stubborn bitch, and Iron Man being sensible and wanting to change with the times.
Mm.
So that's my very biased synopsis of the plot. It's a movie that I even after watching the first two, even after watching, I just saw the message you sent me.
Yeah,
Even after
sorry.
watching the first two Captain America movies, I felt more sympathy towards him in the movie, but I still feel that he was being a douche.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In what, Civil War?
In Civil War.
Okay, well, I haven't seen Civil War,
Yeah.
so I don't really
So, and
know.
the problem I have with it, without spoiling anything, you'll see this when you watch the movie, but he has this just in the very beginning of the movie, somebody calls him arrogant for his stance on the issue that's the pivotal point of that movie, and calls him just dangerously arrogant, and I think that ends up being true. He, through sheer luck, ends up being right. But
I would say the same thing about Iron Man, though.
in some of the okay, what do you mean by that though?
Very arrogant.
Yes,
So much so that it has put people in danger previously.
right.
But he's always been able to fix it, but that's kind of beyond the point.
But here is why I really like him and side with him in this movie, because by the time you get to the Civil War, Tony Stark is older. He's seen world-ending apocalypses. He's had a lot of other stuff happen, and he's grown so much. He starts out exactly like that. He's arrogant. He makes brash decisions. He doesn't think he needs everyone. He thinks everyone else is wrong, and he just goes his own way because he can sort things out. And Iron Man 3 is where they first start to kind of explore that idea, and he ends up just basically losing function. He has PTSD. He's in rough shape.
Does he?
In Iron Man 3, yeah. He has
This is the one with the amusement park, right?
amusement park. No.
Yeah, when he makes the Stark Industry Park.
Nope, that's Iron Man 2.
Okay. Which
But-
one was 3?
Iron Man 3 is the one where there is he has a ton of different suits. He's made 1 billion Iron Man suits because he can't sleep because he has anxiety attacks.
Right. Is that with Jarvis? Becoming a... Anyway.
That you're thinking
I'm
that's
sure I'll
that's
get that.
Avengers: Age of Ultron. I've watched
Okay.
all of these now, so I know where all
There are
the
too
plot
many
points
bloody
happen.
films.
There really are. I didn't realize how many there were until I started watching them. But I'm getting lost in the weeds here. By the time you get to Civil War, Tony Stark has he's seen the ramifications of his actions and what happens when he really
evolved.
can't. Exactly. Which is why the movie to me is about somebody who has seen things blow up in his face, seen where arrogance can lead and the danger and the damage that it can cause. And he's trying to make it right. Whereas Captain America still hasn't seen that happen. And he's still got that dangerous arrogance.
Yeah.
And I would argue that throughout the movie, the whole reason that they're fighting at all is because Captain America, because of that dangerous arrogance, refused to compromise.
I see.
And he's given every opportunity throughout the movie to compromise. He just doesn't, because he is gonna die on his moral high ground. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like the movie's plot, it gives him like, it throws him too many bones. Like, he, on a hunch, just ends up being right like 2 or 3 times throughout the movie, when it was like a 1 in a million shot that he was actually right. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. No, I understand what
They,
you
they
mean.
use plot contrivance to kind of make him seem a little bit more sympathetic rather than
Hmm.
actually exploring the idea that he could go through the same arc as Tony Stark, where,
Yeah, it could go either way.
yeah, his arrogance
Um,
causes problems. Anyway.
I was gonna make it a little bit more recent.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've heard a bit about the Black Widow film that's coming out,
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. It's
and it's
supposed to
been
take place.
delayed
Oh, it got delayed. Really?
because of what happened with Milan.
What happened with Milan?
Milan? Oh, no, not Milan. Mulan.
Oh, Mulan. Okay, yeah. I thought you meant the country Milan.
Not Milanese people. No. Um,
um. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
they there's a lot of worry about how it's going to end out because Black Widow's a pretty damn cool character. I don't think anyone can
Yeah.
deny that.
Well,
But what's happened? Wait, hang on. Is it Milan that changed it, or was it the Captain Marvel controversy?
so
There's been a lot of
it
stress
may have been the
about
Captain
female main
Marvel thing.
characters at
So,
the moment.
but so here's my hot take on this.
Okay.
So in between, we're talking about Marvel. In between Infinity War and Endgame, they did a Captain Marvel film, which I think was a terrible decision. Regardless of
Yeah.
who the character was, could have been a man, could have been a woman, could have been whatever. Doesn't matter. That was the wrong time to do that movie, because they essentially, every person who saw it was like, they're just retconning something. They're putting a character in, like, all these. You said there's way too many of these films. We've had like 12 films to get to know Tony Stark, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Black
There's been that
Widow,
many.
Hawkeye. There's Yeah, there's at least a dozen. Even Spider-Man
No
had a
one cares
couple.
about Hawkeye.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So
Even Spider-Man had a couple movies to like. But the thing is, but audiences know him because he's been in the movies.
hmm.
But what they did was in the middle of like essentially a two-part movie, because that's what Endgame and Infinity War were. In the middle of a two-part movie, they quickly shoved in a brand new character, who no one knew, had never been introduced. There was just like, and then they just decided like, this character is going to be really important in the last movie. What they
Hmm.
should have done,
Very powerful.
yeah, what they should have done was do the Black Widow movie then, because that was the height of her popularity. She's probably one of the more popular characters, and I see after watching Captain America: Winter Soldier, like, she is huge in that show. Like, I don't know, she is one of the best characters, and I think one of the most underrated characters in all of the like the Marvel movies there. So I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it's like a female lead. I think if they had done her as a female lead, did a Black Widow movie in between those two movies to give her more backstory, that would have been
What
so much better.
what I meant by because it's the female lead, I so Scarlett Johansson
Yeah.
has always been she doesn't have any superpowers. She's not particularly extraordinary. She's not all that talkative. Um, but she is badass, and she is really good at something that she has adapted herself and practiced throughout the years. It's really
Yeah.
the small dog in the fight that has a lot of bite.
She's she is,
Um,
dare I say it, a very well written and well developed character.
yep, and the reason that I brought up the whole femininity thing is because at the moment people are, I would say, kind of fed up with female characters being portrayed as uh, a greater species kind of thing. I'm
Like,
trying not to get too political here, but
hyper overpowered. I know what you mean.
yeah, because of social standpoints.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
yeah.
it's an unfortunate time for this movie to be released, but I think as long as they don't As long
I've
as they don't
seen
go
the
into morals on it, I think
yeah.
it'll be an amazing movie.
I've
But
seen
it
the
could go
trailer
either way.
for it. I've seen the trailer for it, and I think it looks really good. Um, so yeah, you're right.
Hmm.
If they don't dig too far into social politics, it'll probably be a really good movie because Black Widow, insanely popular character, loved
Yeah.
her in all of the movies. Like I said, it, she's a character that like how do I put this? Like if a character, it's perfectly fine in a plot if a character is overpowered, but they have to get to that point. You have to
You
show
have to earn
them.
it.
Yeah, exactly. They have to earn it. They have to, go through some kind of a struggle, some kind of a growth pattern. The hero's journey, essentially, but not
Hmm.
necessarily a hero because she's like a spy and an assassin in the movies. But
Yeah.
you have to kind of they have to have something that makes them interesting. The problem with characters uh, yeah, the Captain Marvel is a good example. The problem with her as a character is she didn't earn it. She just like she
No.
starts off the most overpowered and only gets like temporarily limited and then goes back to being the most overpowered.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen the film, but from the clip I keep seeing,
Hmm.
she literally flies through space with no suit on and blows up about a whole army of battleships
She's
just with nothing.
Captain Marvel has the same problem, and we've talked about this on a much earlier podcast, and I've said this multiple times. The reason I hate Superman for the same reason I hate Captain Marvel as a character. Both
Hmm.
of them are so completely overpowered and did nothing to earn it.
Yeah,
Like
broken, as
they
you would
they
say in a game.
exactly as you'd say in a video game, they're both broken, and there's no skill involved with it. Like Superman, he's just invisible or invisible. He's just invincible. Like he
Yeah,
can fly. He's got the laser beam eyes. He's super strong. He's bulletproof. Like if he
yeah.
just
What
decided
isn't
to,
he?
he could exactly. And it's the same thing with her. Like aside from this part of the movie where she gets like limited, she is just. I have seen the movie now because I'm going through all of these. I'm committed to watching all of them. Um,
Oh, did you get? Okay, now I'll wait.
yeah. So, but that's her character. Like she is just she's the Superman of the Marvel universe, and
Hmm.
I dislike both of them for the exact same reason. They are crazy overpowered and did nothing to earn it. That's my final thoughts. Anything else you want to say before we end this segment off?
I was gonna ask quickly. Did you get Disney Plus? Because all the Marvel movies are on there.
I did not, and I wish I had because I've been renting them on Amazon. I've spent like $30.
Because we've been discussing whether you're going to get Disney Plus for a few weeks now, and it's got all the Star Wars, all the Marvel. It's probably maybe worth getting that.
I
Uh,
probably should because I still have to watch Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Infinity War, and Endgame to finish off my marathon run through all of the movies.
right.
And Ant
Um,
Man, honestly, I wasn't gonna rent that one because I didn't have a whole lot of interest in it.
oh,
But
Ant-Man is actually really
is
good.
it really good? Okay, I'll watch that then.
It's very funny. I find it very funny.
All right,
Won't see the
maybe
movie.
I'll get a Disney Plus subscription this week and I'll
Yeah.
cancel it after a month or something like that because I wanted to watch The
Just
Mandalorian too.
just on my closing thought, to be
Yeah.
extra mean, I'm going to do exactly what I did in the first part
Hmm.
and say, um, the what we've been discussing, how like the best characters are the ones that have no abilities and they start off like you or me, so we can actually imprint ourselves onto them, kind of thing.
Hmm.
That's why when I start a new Dungeons and Dragons campaign, that's why I don't start my characters out at level 5 or something. No, they start out at level 1 and they've got to slog their way through it. Because the funnest moments are when you are not powerful at all. It's when you have to really think to get past a problem. And you can't just be like, fireball.
And then you nuke the forest.
Exactly. So don't give Black Panther a fireball. Not Black Panther.
Black
Black
Widow.
Widow. Wait, is Black Panther called Black Panther or is he something else?
No, he is called Black Panther. Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna get really fucking confusing.
Wakanda.
Um, yes. That's my closing thought on Marvel.
Okay. Thank you all for listening. This has been segment 2. Segment 3 coming up today. As Blue alluded to there, I think we're going to be talking about some Dungeons and Dragons a little bit. But stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you again for listening. All right, and we are back with segment 3 of the TMCJ podcast. Blue, you said, well, you suggested this and you alluded to it at the end of the last one. We're going to be talking about D&D this time around.
Yep. Get your dice and your nerdy ass books out because, goddamn.
And for all you normal people out there, you can just go away. No.
Wow.
No, so
Yeah.
D&D, I want to, before I assume you have something you want to talk about, before you do, I want to give a brief, I don't know, history lesson on my part, how I even first started playing it. Because as much as like video games and stuff that I played in high school and stuff, I didn't really hang out in the super nerdy circles. I like I didn't start. I had friends that played it, and I used to make fun of them for it. I remember pissing this one kid off a lot because I was like, "Oh, it's just a board game." He's like, "It's not a fucking board game." Anyway, getting off there. But in college, I had friends that did play it quite a bit. One of my friends, Juan, and I, we got invited down to play an NPC, like just a non-player character, a random monster in an encounter. And
oh yes,
we were promptly kicked out and not invited back.
Because you're being too hilarious.
Yeah, and it was, well, I'm not sure if that was the reason. The encounter went thusly. I got tangled in the weeds. I looked at Juan and it was like, avenge me. And he's like, okay, is it my turn? And our DM said yes. And then Juan points to one of our other friends and just goes, okay, I slapped the shit out of him. That was the end of it. But later, that same group actually, I ended up being quite good friends with, and we ended up actually playing games near our senior year of college. Ended up being a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the gameplay mostly, but I've recently gotten more into the actual role-playing aspect of it, like actually playing a character.
So, I've always been more the RP side of it, and I feel like that question, that answer is actually kind of loaded. A lot of people have strong opinions on RP.
RP meaning roleplay, by the way.
Yes, sorry. It's okay. My introduction to D&D, my father was a big fan of D&D growing up. He played it in school many years ago. In fact, I have one of his old school books where he jotted down like an entire adventure bit, basically in this book, all in like pencil, very neatly drawn out things, and that's just like, it's incredible to me because growing up I didn't really. It's a side of my dad that I hadn't seen before. And don't get me wrong, he always talked about D&D, and we actually got the board game, and I found that a lot of fun. With the board game, it was a lot less RP and a lot more just action because there were specific rules to follow. But it was a lot less complex than the kind of D&D that we play these days, which requires a lot more research. And normally more people as well. So, yes, there's a very big difference between the way that you DM or Dungeon Master and I Dungeon Master, because depending on the group of players, go on.
Wait, I feel like we need to describe that term because a lot of people who are listening to this aren't going to have like maybe the firmest grasp on what like D&D actually entails.
This is true.
So, Dungeon Master, the person is essentially, if you were talking about a video game, they're essentially the computer. They're the people who are controlling all of the people in the game that your characters are going to interact with. They're the people who keep track of the maps and where things are, who kind of, if not completely plan out what's on the map, then they know where everything is and can kind of keep an eye on where enemies are moving, where allies are moving, where things are located, how difficult it is to accomplish a task and moderate things happening between the players. Um, yeah, just figured that little background might have been necessary, but go on.
Yeah.
Talking about the differences in how people DM.
Yeah, so you get these very, very strict D&D games where everyone has played like 3 games of D&D and before. And by the way, 3 games is a lot, all right? Depending on how long they were, that can be like many years worth of playing. Um, where people know exactly what they're going to spec into when they level up. They know how best to deal with certain monstrosities. And so quite often those groups follow very strict rules, and they follow them to the T without deviating. And I think that makes the game kind of a bit two-dimensional because there's no creativity in following a set of rules. I like my players, if they want to do something batshit crazy, like say they're fighting a giant frog. If they just want to go up and hit it with an axe, that's fine. They can do that. I will reward them if they go, okay, this frog is, I don't know, is hates sand or something, and if they try and come up with some crazy mechanism, like dump several pounds worth of sand on top of this creature, then I'll be like, holy shit, that's really cool. It's very creative. I'm going to give you the damage that you would have done, plus a little bit more, because now the thing is covered in sand. Maybe it's weighted down, maybe it's stunned. The more creative they get, often the more difficult it is for them to pull off. But if they do pull it off, very cool.
That really is going back to what I was saying about what it actually means to be in that DM role. DM, I don't know if I said this, stands for Dungeon Master. What it means to be in that role is essentially you're not only monitoring the world and making sure that the rules and things happen, but it's your responsibility too to make sure that it's actually a vibrant, interesting, and rewarding world for the players. If the players act cleverly, they should be rewarded for that. And you got to find ways to do that without. Honestly, being a DM it sounds a lot like being like responsible parents in a lot of ways. you can't spoil your kids. You gotta like give them a little bit. Reward them when they do stuff good, punish them when they do stuff bad, but don't go overboard in either regard. I'm thinking, but you're right. Creative play. I'm thinking of examples in our friend Jesse, who DMs the group that I play in on every Tuesday. He had there was a time, the campaign we're in, there's a zombie dinosaur, right? We find a dead dinosaur body. My character is immune to disease, and so I'm not afraid of this thing. We see something glowing in its stomach, and so I crawl in there to try and find it. At which point the thing starts moving. It's a zombie. It gets up, and at first he's like, all right, you got to roll something to try to get out of it, or to try to stay up inside it. And I was like, no. I was like, what if I don't want to do that? I want to crawl into the dinosaur. And I don't want to try to, like, keep my balance. I want to try to lose my balance and, like, curl up into a ball. Because I'm, like, this heavily armored dude. So I basically was thinking, I want to be a pinball inside of this dinosaur. And on the fly, like, he thought up, like, ways that he could reward that creative play. And that's the sign of, like, a good DM, is when they can, like you're saying, your players do something interesting. Use the sand frog example. That's
a really bad analogy. I couldn't think of anything that frog would be.
That's why I pulled out like an anecdote from a game that I'd played, because it's an example. You've got to find ways to not necessarily make your players feel clever, but recognize when they are being clever and reward them for it.
Yeah, and sometimes punish them equally for it.
Well, right, yeah. When they do something absolutely retarded, you've got to kind of go like, okay, come on.
I I think I told you about this, but recently I set my party up against an undead character,
Hmm.
and so it's very hard to kill an undead character without magic um or like special silvered weapons.
Yeah.
One of the characters in the game is like, I got this pot of oil. I want to go up to the undead lich and just like smash it on its chest right in front of it in melee range, and then set fire to it in melee range.
Yeah. That's.
And so I was like, go on.
I see where this is going. No, go on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, it's a pot of oil. It's going to go everywhere. And he was like, yeah, I want to do it. So by the end of the fight, he was on fire, of course. But it made for a brilliant moment, and I really appreciate the fact that he did actually go through with it. Because if you just hit it with magic missile
Yeah.
over and over again, it's just a dead lich.
I,
Now it's got so much more flavor to it.
I'm a big fan of the idea, and I've said this a couple times in our recent sessions because we play D&D together. I'm DMing the game that we're in, just for those listening.
Yeah.
There are
And you're a
times.
very good DM, I will say.
There's one thing that I commit myself to, and that's that I do not put invisible walls in my games. Like,
No.
there's never anything that I will say a player absolutely cannot do unless it's something that's physically impossible. Like, a player can't just Mary Poppins think their way up to fly in the sky. But
Yeah.
within reason, like, so if you're in like a royal meeting, right, and a king is talking to you, and you want to get up and just go, I'm bored now, and bitch slap him, you can do that, but there will be consequences.
The party will hate me, but I could do it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, but again, I always leave that option for success in there, or try to, even in the most weird situations. Perfect example is when you guys decided you wanted to rob the caravan that you were on.
Yep.
I threw a whole bunch of obstacles in there, but there was an avenue to success, a couple of them, and you managed to finagle your way into a few and found ways out of that situation that I hadn't even thought of.
Indeed. And I would say that was one of the greatest parts because I there was a lot of very tense moments where when you're like a kid and you're sneaking downstairs to maybe nick a packet of chips, or like a chocolate bar from the sweet bin.
Thank you for
Americanizing.
Yeah. Sweet bin would be a candy jar over here.
Yeah, and you're like, you're not meant to do it, and if you get caught, you'll be in trouble. The pure rush of like doing it. That's exactly how it felt in the game because we were being a bit very naughty, and if we'd been caught, it would have been really bad for us.
You stole
But
17
the
grand from a
thrill.
merchant caravan. That's more than a little bit
Yeah.
naughty.
We got loaded after that. That was a great experience.
Yeah.
But more recently, to show just how there are no invisible walls in that campaign, my character in the session before last has now decided, look, we've had a lot of action. I want to learn how to like fish and like maybe one day extreme fish, where I'm like chasing sea monsters kind of thing. And Kaiser had no idea I was going to be talking about this kind of thing, but he has incorporated it, and there may be something to do with that later down the line. And in the last session, he even incorporated us stealing from our own party, which was quite a twist, I think.
Yeah.
And it was very cool, I thought.
After all of those stutters that I just did, after all those examples, though, this brings me back to my point that there's really the difference I find between a really good DM and a really bad DM is a really like a good DM or somebody who's trying to be a good DM. They're somebody who will like let the story will work around the players, not necessarily work around, but the story will like live and grow organically around what the players do. a bad DM has a story in mind and will try to force the players into that story. The story stays the same shape, and they try to squeeze the players into that shape.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not meant to be a linear path like a game. Like if the games industry had unlimited budget and time,
Yeah,
they would have like these vast, very complex games where you can take a path and it can lead you on a completely different story if you'd gone a different way. And
that's the dream of video games, though, is to have some
exactly,
one where you can actually get to the same level as what you get in a D&D campaign.
yeah,
There's a certain level of like you have to have some imagination to play this sort of game. You have to have some ability to kind of
oh, very
picture
much so.
things because very
But I
very
think
lo-fi.
also, even if you don't have imagination, after playing a few games, I feel like it's something that kind of helps.
Helps
Um,
maybe helps
yeah,
build imagination. Yeah.
I know when I was going through when I was in school, uh, and there was the kind of idea that if you did drama, it would build your confidence
Yeah.
for like speaking and things. And whilst I don't think that's, I don't really know many people where it actually helped them that much in that respect. Well, maybe it did. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the same kind of thing, except it's a lot less of a significant life change. Like we do this once a week for a few hours,
Yeah.
um, and I really do feel like it's helped me socially.
Well, I I've said this to you as well. Like, maybe not socially. You already know me, and we've mentioned this before. I'll talk to anybody.
Oh yeah, you're a
But
nightmare.
but that's always been the thing. But what it has helped me with is when I'm doing like for work, when I'm working on a project and I have like teams of people who are trying to do something, and I need to get a thought across clearly, concisely, and
Hmm.
like in a well enunciated way. This definitely, I don't know if it necessarily helped improve those skills, but it definitely shook the cobwebs off after being trapped inside for 6 months.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it makes you think a little bit more
Yeah.
before speaking, kind of thing.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely found myself doing that a little bit more having done this podcast. Is I talk a little bit more slowly, believe it or not, as fast as I
Yeah.
talk, even on this. I talk a little bit more slowly, and I think about what I'm saying. I try to organize my thoughts before I open my mouth. Go
Hmm.
figure.
Yeah. When I started this campaign that I'm running,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
gonna lie, I was pretty terrified because there was I'd been asked to do it by an old friend of mine, a good friend, and other than that good friend, there were going to be five other people who I'd never met before. Uh,
Strangers.
in the end, it went down to four people I'd never met before, and then due to anyway,
Yeah, don't go into that.
um, yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, there's these four people I've never met before, and I'm essentially when you talk about D&D, it's kind of like a guilty topic with someone you've never spoken to about before because you're always like, are they judging me because of this? I don't know, maybe. But yes, I was very nervous, but after like the first session, I'd say I was fairly fluent at talking to them. Um, go on.
No, no, just when you were just describing that, it reminded me of. This is going to sound like a non sequitur, but trust me that it isn't.
Okay.
There used to be these little, like, funny things that would pop up in the Guitar Hero 2 and 3 loading screens.
Yeah.
And one of them was the a band is the dysfunctional family that you choose. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that's what most D&D player parties are like,
Hmm.
because they really do. If you play for long enough, they develop their own like internal dynamic. Like this character is probably going to be doing this. This character is probably going to be doing this. They become almost like a dysfunctional family to
Yeah.
varying degrees of dysfunction.
Yeah. And there have been emotional moments for sure. Um, Like some D&D campaigns don't really go into that. I know the one that we have with Kevin, Jake, and Duncan. I don't think it's particularly emotional.
Well, not normally.
There are dramatic moments.
I'm thinking of like the parting with Professor Landy.
Yeah, that was pretty sad. And anything to do with Butterbean,
Yep.
very emotional.
Yep.
That's true.
There are,
Um,
you're right. There are mostly dramatic moments, but even then, it has been punctuated with a few emotional ones.
hmm. Yes, you can certainly pick and choose whether you want if you want a horror D&D campaign. I know Jesse's trying his damnedest to do one of them right now.
Yep. Yep.
It
Yep.
sounds like it's going pretty well, although he's struggling with certain aspects. Um,
I was really
and yeah,
curious how that would go because I know the two people he's doing it for. There are two other friends of mine from college,
mm,
and they picturing them playing in that kind of a campaign would be I don't know. I'm trying to get a picture of it in my head, but I can't.
yeah. But no, I'm very happy with the way that things are going in both the campaign that I'm in and the one that I'm hosting.
Hmm.
And I do genuinely look forward to it at the end of the week. I don't look forward to having like a super rough voice the next day because I've been doing all these
All the talking, yeah.
weird voices. Yeah, but yeah, it's always awkward for the first 20 minutes or so, where everyone's kind of warming back into it.
Mm.
Everyone's like, okay, what do I actually have to do? But once these set out, everything kind of clicks back together, and it's a lot more cohesive. So much so that I often forget to have like a halftime break, and I'm the worst for that.
Well, it's funny. We talk about this. You get into these little like projects that you really enjoy. DMing is one of them. I definitely feel that way for about the game that I'm running. The other one, I mean, this podcast is a perfect example. So for I don't know if I've mentioned it before. We record these on Saturdays, and we have
Yeah.
D&D right after this, the campaign that I'm hosting, and so my Saturdays are very very busy because I prep for this, and then I prep for the D&D campaign, and that's my morning. And then we jump right into the podcast. We finish that, and then we jump right into D&D, and then it's like mid-afternoon or late afternoon by that point. And yeah, but the thing is, if it's fulfilling, if you get the enjoyment out of it, like, I mean, I can tell from what you've said about the campaign that you're on or the campaign that you're running, if it's enjoyable, if it's fulfilling to you, hell yeah, just fucking do it.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of for people out there who have been thinking about doing D&D but haven't really got the drive to do it. I would say it's definitely best to start out playing it with people that you know. Don't go into a random lobby,
Yeah.
because the best things come from like an inside joke, for example.
Mhm.
That's certainly the way to start anyway. It's a great way to make on like Roll20 is a website
Yeah.
where people play D&D. It's a good way to find friends later on. To start out, yeah, I'd recommend just a small group, maybe someone who's DM'd before, because then it's just a little bit easier to get into the flow of things sooner on. And yeah, just don't pay too much heed to rules. If you think something's makes sense in your head, then just go with that. Like, don't worry about that. I know the combat at the beginning, I paid very little attention to the rules of combat because I didn't have it sussed in my head at the time. So I was like, okay, I think the very first attack that someone made was not even in combat. They just were like throwing a javelin down the street, and I just kind of fudged it. And they still had to roll for it. There was that chance that they would miss. But yeah, it's
That's a good point to make. Is that even like when even if you're making like house rules or like fudging things or like not quite getting things by the book, um, it's important that if you're the DM and even as the player, it's important that things are fair, like that the rules are fairly applied. I made this mistake pretty early on DMing. I tried doing a little campaign, and in my mind, I was applying things fairly. I was setting like difficulties and stuff in my head, and apparently, like one of the players felt very much that I was kind of acting against them, like being
mm,
a Deus Ex Machina to prevent them from succeeding. Um, so it's something, but it's a two-way street. Like the nothing like people who you'll get the most enjoyment playing a game like D&D, either playing as a player or playing as a DM, if you recognize the fact that it's it's not a hard and fast set of rules. It's not a solidified edifice that has to be adhered to on either side. It's all a negotiation.
mm. And we like being told, or at least I think I speak for guys when I say we like being surprised as a DM. We don't
Oh,
generally want everything to be the same
that's half
because
the
that's
fun.
boring for us as well.
That's
Yeah,
half the fun of being a DM is watching some of the kooky, stupid shit that your players will get up to.
yeah,
As
uh,
much work as that caravan robbery was for me on the back end,
hmm,
um, it was so much fun to watch what the hell you guys were doing.
yeah. Because if the players are having a good time, we're having a good time. Essentially, we
Yeah,
don't want to kill your characters. Um,
but it could happen.
yeah, it's kind of a popular ideology because we're the ones that make the bad guys. We essentially run the evil corporations. But yeah, it's just as saddening to us for us because there have been times where I've like halfway through a combat and I'm suddenly like, oh my god, what have I done? I This is terrible. They're gonna die. What have I done? But then they find a way to get through it,
Mm.
and then I'm literally like, oh, fucking relief. Thank God. Because yeah, it's I don't
All right, we're kind of like I feel like we're running up on the end of this thing here. We're
know.
kind of
Okay, yeah.
rehashing a few points over and over. So end it off strong. I want you
Mm.
and me to both think of your favorite D&D moment as a DM and as a player. Mine as a DM is easy. It was the caravan thing. Like that just doesn't broker argument. I've already talked plenty about it. So you as a
Yeah.
DM, favorite moment.
Oh, um, okay. Oh God, I really got. Shit.
If you don't have anything
Um,
right now, I can go into my favorite moment as a player because I have it prepared.
well, okay, so I've had quite a few moments that I really love, but um, there's one where the characters in my party, it was an emotional moment,
Mhm.
and one of the people said, just out of game, I'm really attached to this right now. They were like, I'm so in the game right now. It's such an emotional moment. It's almost making me like cry IRL.
Oh God.
Um, and like in happiness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that was really fulfilling to me. I was like, oh my god,
When you
I'm
realize that,
doing a damn good job.
yeah, when you realize the players have really they've gotten into the game to that extent, I can see
Yeah,
that.
that's my favorite moment.
As as a player, oh God, I thought I had one, but then I thought of another one. This is really difficult to describe. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
describe one moment that I really liked. So we were in a cave of some kind, and it's a moment in combat. We found this dragon. Dragon's attacking one of my teammates, and who has like pretty much no combat abilities. They're a support kind of character. They have a musical instrument, not that many weapons, a couple very weak spells. I'm playing a monk that can basically attack 4 times a turn. The dude is like can use fists in the same way that most people can use knives. Really powerful character. So I jump on the dragon's neck and literally ride the thing around like donkey punching it in the back of the head to get it
Hmm.
off like my teammate. And it drags me underwater, but the monk like doesn't need to breathe the same way because he's got this special training or whatever. So I continue to just punch the hell out of it underwater, while the rest of the team is just up top trying to figure out what to do to hit this thing.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a lot of
Yeah.
moments like that in games. You that's the thing. There, what you'll find playing these games is that, like you said, the games can go on for years,
Yeah.
depending on how frequently you do sessions.
Yeah. I mean, your Jesse one's been going like 3 years, hasn't it?
2.5 now, yeah, or a little over two. I
Yeah.
think we just passed the 2 year mark.
Okay.
Started in 2018, but we do it every Tuesday night, only for like an hour and a half. So it's,
Hmm.
with some weeks skipped. But you'll end up
My
with these like these anecdotes that are unique to that party and that game that you'll tell each other.
hmm.
Anyway, go on. Favorite moment as a
I
player.
was just gonna say my favorite part in game, and I know it's kind of getting repetitive now, but during the heist segment of the campaign that you're running, I remember every day, like outside of the game. So I was like at work, and it wasn't particularly. I didn't have to do much thinking at my workplace, and so I was just going over possibility after possibility of what I could do, how I could get the most out of the scenario. I was really thinking hard about it. I wish I spent that much time thinking about my IRL, job prospects. Um, but yeah, I had so many different plans, and so I was really excited around that time. So that's got to be my favorite in-game character moments.
Honestly, that
Was outside of the game.
that adds to my experience knowing that like it actually had you that compelled.
Oh yeah.
Well, we've actually. I think that's a good place to wrap it off on. Hopefully, you enjoyed that. We kind of ventured into a very specific, very niche topic this segment 3, but again, that's what segment 3 is supposed to do. It's meant to be a wild card. It's meant to be an indulgence. So hopefully you enjoyed it. But regardless, thank you for listening. If you made it this far, this is the end of the podcast altogether. Episode 9. Next week we'll be back with episode 10. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you.